Chapter 5. Action in Devotion, Engaging Body, Mind, and Speech. One who is engaged in divine consciousness, though seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving, sleeping, breathing, speaking, emptying, receiving, or opening or closing his eyes, always knows that he does nothing himself, but that the senses are engaged in their objects. Bhagavad Gita 5.8-9. From thinking to doing, where the rubber meets the road. Imagine you've learned all about nutrition, read every health book, and memorized the principles of good eating. But if you never actually change what you put on your plate, all that knowledge remains theoretical. The same principle applies to mental and spiritual transformation. At some point, understanding must translate into action. We've explored how to identify mental UFOs and replace them with divine truth. We've discussed the power of Krishna consciousness to transform our very identity. But now comes the crucial question: how do we live these insights in our daily activities? How do we bridge the gap between spiritual understanding and practical living? This is where Max Lucado's emphasis on aligning our thoughts with God's truth meets the Bhagavad Gita's profound teaching on Karma Yoga, the path of devotional action. It's not enough to think better thoughts, we need to learn how to act, speak, and live in a way that reinforces our spiritual transformation. The power connection: thoughts, actions, and transformation. Max Lucado understands something crucial: our thoughts don't exist in a vacuum. They shape our actions, and our actions reinforce our thought patterns. It's a continuous feedback loop that can either spiral us upward toward peace and purpose or downward into anxiety and confusion. The Bhagavad Gita takes this insight even deeper. It explains that we're like passengers in a sophisticated vehicle. Your body is the car. Your intelligence is the driver. Your mind is the steering mechanism. Your senses are like powerful horses pulling the vehicle. The key insight is this: unless the driver, intelligence, is trained and the steering, mind, is properly connected to a higher purpose, even the most powerful horses, senses, will drag you wherever they want to go. Transforming everyday struggles through devoted action. Let's look at how Lucado's practical strategies for common mental struggles can be elevated through what we might call devotional living. Dealing with overwhelm, the art of sacred simplicity. Lucado's approach: break tasks down, lean on supportive people, set realistic limits. The devotional upgrade. The Bhagavad Gita teaches something revolutionary. When your actions are motivated by service to something greater than yourself, you naturally become more focused and efficient. It's like the difference between trying to clean a messy garage because you should, versus cleaning it as a gift for someone you love. Regulated living for mental peace. The ancient text emphasizes regulating 4 basic areas of life: eating, sleeping, recreation, and work. This isn't about rigid rules but about conscious choices that support your higher goals. Think about it. When you eat mindfully, not while stressed or distracted, sleep adequately, not too much or too little, exercise appropriately, not obsessively or not at all, and work purposefully, not just for money but as service, you naturally feel more balanced and less overwhelmed. Some of the great spiritual practitioners mentioned in the text, like Srila Rupa Goswami, slept only 2 hours per day, not because they were forcing themselves, but because they were so engaged in meaningful activity that excessive sleep felt like a waste of precious time. The power of spiritual community. Lucado's advice to lean on supportive people finds its perfect expression in what the Bhagavad Gita calls association of devotees. This doesn't necessarily mean changing your social circle overnight, but it does mean consciously connecting with people who support your highest aspirations rather than just your material desires. When you're around people who are also trying to grow spiritually, live ethically, and serve others, their example naturally elevates your own consciousness. It's like being around people who are physically fit. Their habits tend to inspire better choices in yourself. Handling pain and confusion, the long view. Lucado's approach: anchor thoughts in faith and long-term hope rather than seeking immediate clarity. The devotional perspective. The Bhagavad Gita teaches that pain and confusion often come from taking a too narrow view of our existence. When you understand yourself as an eternal spiritual being temporarily wearing the costume of your current life circumstances, challenges become less overwhelming. Faith as spiritual intelligence. The text describes faith not as blind belief but as unflinching trust in something sublime. It's like a GPS system for life. When you trust that there's a bigger picture and a loving intelligence guiding your journey, you can navigate temporary difficulties without losing your overall direction. This doesn't mean becoming passive or fatalistic. Rather, it means doing your best while surrendering the results to divine wisdom. It's the difference between being a control freak, which creates anxiety, and being a conscious participant in a larger plan, which creates peace. The eternal perspective. When pain hits, most of us get tunnel vision. This problem feels like our entire reality. But the Bhagavad Gita offers a radically different viewpoint. You are an eternal soul currently having a temporary human experience. Your current difficulties, no matter how intense, are like scenes in a movie, real while you're experiencing them, but not your ultimate identity. This perspective doesn't minimize pain or encourage denial. Instead, it provides a framework for experiencing difficulty without being destroyed by it. It's like the difference between being caught in a storm versus watching it from a safe shelter. The storm is still real, but your relationship to it is transformed. Overcoming fear of rejection, divine worth versus human approval. Lucato's approach: base your worth on God's acceptance rather than others' approval. The revolutionary identity shift. The Bhagavad Gita teaches that every living being is an eternal part of the Supreme Divine. This isn't just a nice philosophical idea, it's meant to be a lived reality that transforms how you see yourself and others. When you truly understand that your value comes from your connection to the infinite source of all love and intelligence, other people's opinions become much less threatening. It's like the difference between a child who's secure in their parents' love versus one who's desperate for approval from strangers. Freedom from false identification. Much of our fear of rejection comes from over-identifying with temporary roles and circumstances. We think, I am my job, I am my bank account, I am my social status, I am this aging body. When any of these things are threatened, we feel like we're dying. But the Bhagavad Gita teaches that you are not any of these temporary designations. You're an eternal spiritual being wearing these roles like costumes in a play. When you know who you really are, criticism of your costume doesn't threaten your core identity. This doesn't mean becoming arrogant or uncaring about others' feelings. Rather, it means becoming free from the desperate need for external validation that drives so much anxiety and people-pleasing behavior. The practical mechanics: training your internal team. The Bhagavad Gita offers specific strategies for training your mind, intelligence, and senses to work together harmoniously rather than pulling you in different directions. Intelligence as the wise executive. Your intelligence is meant to be the CEO of your internal world, making wise decisions based on long-term values rather than short-term impulses. The text calls this Buddhi Yoga, or devotional intelligence. Instead of being reactive, letting whatever is loudest in your environment determine your choices, devotional intelligence asks, how can this situation be used for spiritual growth and service to others? For example, instead of just trying to get through a difficult workday, you might ask, how can I use this challenge to develop patience, compassion, or problem-solving skills that will benefit others? The mind as a trained assistant. Rather than trying to suppress your mind, which rarely works, the goal is to train it like you would train a valuable but sometimes unruly assistant. You give it engaging, meaningful work to do. The most practical method recommended is what we discussed earlier, chanting sacred names like Hare Krishna. This gives your mind a positive focus that's more interesting than its usual worry cycles. It's like giving a hyperactive child an absorbing video game instead of just telling them to sit still. Senses as instruments of service. Instead of viewing your senses as enemies to be conquered, the Bhagavad Gita suggests engaging them in service to something greater than personal gratification. Practical examples. Tongue. Instead of just eating whatever you crave, choose foods that nourish your body and consciousness. Many traditions recommend offering food to the divine before eating. This simple practice transforms meals from mere consumption into grateful communion. Eyes. Instead of constantly seeking visual stimulation or comparing yourself to others, use your sight to appreciate beauty in nature, see the good in people, or study wisdom literature. Ears. Instead of filling your mind with negativity from news or gossip, choose to listen to music, teachings, or conversations that elevate your consciousness. Voice. Instead of complaining, criticizing, or engaging in meaningless chatter, use your speech to encourage others, share wisdom, or express gratitude. The liberation effect, beyond ordinary action. When your actions are motivated by service rather than personal gain, something miraculous happens. You become free from what the Bhagavad Gita calls karmic reactions. This doesn't mean you become irresponsible or that consequences don't matter. Rather, it means you're no longer trapped by anxiety about outcomes or burdened by regret about past actions. Freedom from the success-failure trap. Most of us are on an exhausting emotional roller coaster, elated when things go well, devastated when they don't. But when your actions are offered as service to the divine, you can do your best without being emotionally dependent on results. It's like the difference between a performer who's desperate for applause versus one who's simply expressing their art as a gift. Both might give excellent performances, but one is anxious and needy while the other is peaceful and generous. The compound interest of spiritual action. The Bhagavad Gita makes an amazing promise: even a small amount of devotional action has permanent value. Unlike material efforts where you need complete success to get any benefit, spiritual action accumulates. Even if you only manage to act consciously 10% of the time, that 10% builds spiritual strength that carries forward. This removes the pressure to be perfect and allows you to focus on gradual, consistent growth rather than dramatic overnight transformation. Making it real. Starting where you are. The beauty of devotional action is that it doesn't require you to change your entire lifestyle overnight. Instead, it's about gradually transforming the consciousness behind your existing activities. Begin with intention. Start each day with a simple intention: how can I use today's activities to grow spiritually and serve others? This single shift in motivation can transform ordinary tasks into spiritual practice. Practice sacred pausing. Throughout your day, take brief moments to remember your higher purpose. Before eating, take a moment of gratitude. Before difficult conversations, silently ask for wisdom and patience. Before sleep, reflect on what you learned and how you grew. Serve without announcing. Look for opportunities to help others without expecting recognition or reward. This could be as simple as really listening to someone, doing excellent work even when no one is watching, or offering anonymous kindness to strangers. Transform routine activities. Turn commuting into meditation time, chanting, prayer, or contemplation. Transform household chores into mindfulness practice. Convert exercise into moving meditation. Turn meals into communion with the divine source of nourishment. The ultimate promise: a life of purpose and peace. Both Max Lucado's Christian approach and the Bhagavad Gita's ancient wisdom point toward the same beautiful destination: a life where your thoughts, words, and actions are aligned with divine love and purpose. When you live this way, several remarkable things happen. Anxiety decreases because you're not carrying the burden of controlling outcomes. Relationships improve because you're focused on giving rather than getting. Work becomes meaningful because it's service rather than just survival. Challenges become growth opportunities rather than just problems to solve. Peace becomes your natural state rather than something you have to chase. This isn't about perfection, it's about direction. Every step you take toward aligning your actions with your highest values moves you closer to the peace and purpose you're seeking. The question isn't whether this transformation is possible; countless people throughout history have proven that it is. The question is whether you're ready to begin living your understanding rather than just thinking about it. Your thoughts have prepared the ground. Now it's time to plant seeds through devoted action and watch the garden of your life bloom into something beautiful.